I didn't realize it until it was too late, but family members of a defendant at a criminal trial can present character references during the sentencing phase. Since I didn't realize it in time to actually do it, I decided instead that I would write a character reference for my cousin, Lori Vallow Daybell, and read it here on my channel. To the Honorable Judge Justin Boreski, I'm writing this character reference for my cousin, the defendant in these two cases, as a member of her extended family who has known her for many years. I have grieved deeply over the tragic events that have led us to this point, and I recognize the gravity of the charges and convictions. Today, I feel compelled to share my perspective on Lori's character based on our shared history. As a child, she had wispy white blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She was a little chubby for the first 10 years or so, which I thought made her infinitely huggable, but her brothers teased her terribly for it. By the time she was 13, she had turned skinny and tall and grew her hair long. She was very pretty and started looking for modeling jobs. She was a cheerleader, always surrounded by friends, and she could have dated anyone she wanted. The defendant and I are a little over 1 year apart in age, and as a child, I visited with her and her family during summers when they lived in Southern California. We went to the beach together and to amusement parks. We both loved to sing, and we recorded songs together. After I graduated from high school, I lived with her and her brother Adam for a short time when they lived in Austin, Texas together. She and her sister were bridesmaids at my wedding. Her oldest son and my oldest daughter were close for the first decade of their lives. She was a hairdresser, and I often drove to Austin so that she could do my hair. For the 10 years her parents lived in San Antonio, our families spent a lot of time together, gathering at her parents' house for holidays, birthdays, and special events dozens of times a year. I had the opportunity to observe this family very closely for a very long time. Their family stories were mine too. I understand how their family system works and what they value. I believe that family values shape an individual's character and have a profound effect on behavior. And so I understand this defendant and her character on a very deep level. Alex Cox also lived in San Antonio for a few years, as did his oldest sister, Stacy. One night, Alex asked me to come with him to the family home to check on Stacy. He was worried about her because she had been depressed lately. She had type 1 diabetes and gastroparesis, a serious complication caused by years of disordered eating. Stacy had been left in San Antonio alone while this defendant, her parents, and her sister went on a vacation to Hawaii. Alex told me that Stacy had said she was going to, quote, take a big shot and go to bed. When he and I arrived at the house, we found Stacy not in her room, but in her parents' bed. She was unresponsive. We called 911 and followed the ambulance to the hospital, where doctors informed us that Stacy was in a diabetic coma from which she would never wake. They told us she had only a few days to live, and so in the absence of her parents, my father arranged for hospice care. Stacy's family remained in Hawaii. She died just a few days later, while their family was finally on the plane home. She was just 32 years old. I later learned that Janice and Barry, Stacy's parents, and the parents of this defendant, had told Stacy that maybe she was just meant to die young, and that maybe it was, quote, just her time to go. I believe this incident reflects what this family values and helps partially explain why the defendant has so little regard for human life. As to the defendant's character, her name is Lori Noreen Cox. She was an unloved daughter. She didn't even get her own name. She was never allowed to be herself, an individual with their own identity and their own life. She was always told she was someone else, living someone else's life. 2 years before Lori was born, Janice Cox gave birth to a baby girl, her third child. They named her Laura Lee. They called her Lolly. Sadly, Lolly was born with an undiagnosed congenital heart defect, and she died when she was just 6 weeks old. When Janice got pregnant just over a year later, she was convinced that this baby was Lolly's spirit coming back to her. In her grief over losing her infant daughter, Janice convinced herself that she never lost Lolly, but that Lolly was so special that she was allowed to come back to Earth again. And then she convinced Lori that she was Lolly. The reality is that Lolly was lost. The hard truth is that sometimes infants die, and there's no reasoning and no explanation that makes it feel better. But Lori's mother couldn't sit with that. She couldn't accept that, and so instead, she taught Lori that she was Laura Lee. She taught Lori that Laura Lee must have had a special mission, and that's why her spirit got to come back into Lori's body. So essentially, Janice taught Lori that she didn't matter. She taught Lori that she didn't deserve to have her own name or her own life or her own identity. She devoured Lori. And then, to make matters worse, Lori was violated. I don't have any evidence, just rumors and family stories, but I know how it feels and what it looks like and what behaviors are developed as a result of that trauma. And so I recognize all of that in her. So even though I don't know when or how or by whom exactly, she does. She knows what happened. She knows who did it to her. She may pretend that it never happened, but the memory of it lives in her cells, and she can't ignore it because those feelings come for her, and they find her in the quiet moments she wishes would go away. I know what it feels like. It feels like you're crazy. Sometimes survivors are even told that they are crazy, because if we're crazy, then nothing we say really matters. The perpetrator prevails. The perpetrator gets to keep living his life while we suffer, because somehow secrecy is more important than our sanity. Somehow his reputation is worth more than our minds. But that's life. Shit happens. We are all treated badly at some point. We are all abused. Nobody gets out of this life without being hurt by someone they should have been able to trust. What matters is what we choose to do when we are used or abused or betrayed. Some of us say that we will never hurt anyone the way that we were hurt, but not Lori. She decided that she would never be hurt again the way she was hurt. And so she built walls instead of bridges. Instead of risking rejection and asking for what she needed, she took what she needed. She stole what she thought she needed. All along the way, she stole again and again. She stole from her family. She stole from Nelson. She stole from Billy. She stole from me. She stole from Joe. And then, when it was Lolly time, she stole from Charles. She stole from Tammy. She stole from Brandon. She stole from Colby. And in the worst act of betrayal possible, she stole the lives of her own children. She stole everything from Tyle, and she stole everything from JJ. There are lots of reasons people steal, but for Lori, I want to focus on 4. Sometimes people steal out of scarcity. Some people steal when they think they can't get what they need on their own. Sometimes they steal for the thrill of it, and sometimes they steal just because they can. I think Lori started stealing for the first reason. I think that her lack of identity caused her to steal time and attention. She was the kind of person who fished for compliments. She was the kind of person who compelled people to flatter her. When people weren't paying attention to her, she did something shocking to make them pay attention. When she didn't win the Mrs. Texas pageant, she decided she didn't need Joe's money anymore, and she discarded him in the most vile way possible, accusing him of being a pedophile, attempting to destroy his reputation, and stealing the most important thing, which was time with Tyle. Then she started stealing other people's attention too. She didn't adopt JJ because she loved him. She adopted him because she wanted the label of being a mom to a special needs child. Instead of actually caring about giving him a loving home with Charles, what she cared about was being seen, buying him a service dog, and being seen, enrolling him in a special school. She didn't tell people about his autism to help him get what he needed. She told people so that she could get what she needed, which was always to have the spotlight on her instead of the people who mattered. If pancreatitis was the correct diagnosis for Tyle, I believe Lori caused it. She didn't sit in the hospital with her because she cared about her, but because she wanted to be able to use her sickness to gain sympathy for herself. She poisoned Tyle. She poisoned Charles. She poisoned Larry. And she poisoned Melanie against Brandon. Just like she poisoned her religion. I think she poisoned for the thrill of it. It was like her sick little secret that she thought nobody knew. If she ever did make green chili enchiladas, they were probably poisoned. She enjoyed the thrill of being able to control people's health and well-being. Only insecure people poison. It's a passive act. The victim will feel the effects when the poisoner isn't around. The poisoner is a coward who can't confront people directly and doesn't have the stomach to actually watch someone suffer. But everyone around Lori suffered. Unfortunately, I think Tyle suffered the most. She was an unloved daughter of an unloved daughter. Tyle was bright and beautiful, just like Lori had been as a child. And so, as Tyle grew into a smart and talented young lady, fiercely loyal and protective of JJ, she became a threat to Lori. Nobody in Lori's orbit was allowed to be smarter or skinnier or prettier than her, and so she discarded everyone who fit that description. But since Tyle was a child, Lori could still use her and manipulate her. And so Lori kept Tyle small, and she kept Tyle sick, and she used Tyle for her games and her whims and her twisted sadism. Lori took Tyle's life long before she was murdered. She devoured her. Charles outsmarted Lori when he changed his life insurance policy, and not only did Kay benefit, she also caused a lot of problems for Lori when she started asking, "Where is JJ?" Lori and Alex escaped justice for attacking Joe Ryan with a slap on the wrist. They avoided any accountability for his suspicious death. They eluded the police in Chandler, landing safely in Chad Daybell's backyard. And the only person causing them problems was the very person who got the money they killed Charles for. So killing JJ was not just about, quote, too many kids. It was also about exacting revenge on Kay, who was threatening to do what Lori has always feared: expose her as a fraud, a liar, a thief, and a murderer. She killed JJ just because she could. I think she's proud of what she's done. I think she secretly wanted to open the door to her previous convictions so she could see the looks of shock and horror on the jurors' faces. I think she likes being called a murderer, but she doesn't really deserve the distinction, if you can call it that, because she lacked the courage to actually cause that kind of depraved suffering. And so she always made someone else pull the trigger. I'm sure you didn't watch her interviews, so it might surprise you to know that there was a look of concealed delight on her face when a reporter called her a serial killer. The truth is that Lori is one of the most deeply insecure people I've ever met. All of her bragging and grandstanding is simply a mask she wears so that nobody will see how much she truly hates herself and how needy she is. But in that quiet space between awake and asleep, when the cameras are gone and there's nobody watching her, she knows who she really is and what she has really done. And she's terrified of being exposed as the fraud that she is. So instead of sitting with those thoughts and feelings, that's the time she uses to plot and plan what she will do and say to cover up reality and manufacture a world in which she is all the things she pretends to be. It must be exhausting. The courtroom is the scariest place for people like Lori because there are rules about evidence and procedure. It's probably the only place in the world where her tactics can't work. The thing that manipulators fear more than anything else is public failure. And Lori knew she was failing over and over and over, which is why her tactics became increasingly desperate as the trials wore on. Because she was being held accountable for the first time, she couldn't handle the shame, and her last timid attempt to regain control was to fake being sick. Although she may have actually been ill, her malingering was another tactic to avoid accountability, public failure, and inescapable humiliation. I will not address the defendant directly, but if I was going to say anything to her, I would tell her that she is despised by the public. And although she might have enjoyed a brief bout of infamy, she is nothing close to famous. I would let her know that all of her fretting about throwing up on TV was unnecessary because it's not even being televised. It's only a tiny corner of the internet that cares enough to watch her trial. And even those people are already turning their attention elsewhere. Many of the channels that used to cover her case are now covering bigger, more important stories. Many of them didn't even care enough to cover her sentencing here. The only reason she got interviews here is because the more she talks, the more she reveals the truth of what really happened. So she's been outsmarted again. And what will sting her worse than that is to realize that she's the one who's being manipulated and used. So, Judge, even though her badly spelled handwritten motions fail to make any rational conclusions or have any basis in law, the defendant isn't stupid. She just isn't what one would call book smart. The only thing she really knows how to do is manipulate people, use them, and then discard them, just like any garden variety narcissist. I believe she's too cowardly to actually tell the truth or to face the reality of what she's done, and so she will continue to live in her delusion until the day she dies. I respectfully ask the court to make sure she dies in prison. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Megan Connor, cousin of Tyle, JJ, Charles, and Brandon, admirer of Tammy Daybell, truth teller, pot stirrer, revolutionary.